14 months. She's a doll. Let's see. Where can I put this where it won't catch on fire? Hey, we're making a journey together. It's a pretty cool journey. You know, it's not uncommon that we deal with the metaphysics of the Christmas story during this Advent season. But we've added also the fact that by taking the extended look at this story, really pulling it out into its segments, that it illumines for us the stages of our own spiritual journey. I've actually been fascinated by this. I've never looked at it this way. So last week, Sue did a beautiful job of introducing us to the fact of how faith can support us in really being able to say yes to these invitations of spirit in our life, saying yes to God, if you will. But what we find out in real life is we can say yes to a lot of things that feel real to us, that feel true to us in the moment. But that's just the beginning. And by the way, I'm not discounting how hard it can be to say yes. But don't think the journey's over at yes, right? That there's something, that little universe of ours that can be quite a little stinker. And I suppose it makes sense because we can choose to do a lot of things in our life. But when we really take on our heart's desires, or maybe you'd like to call them your soul's desires, or when you get guidance from Spirit, it's often inviting us to express some potential that we maybe weren't aware that we had. And so we're stepping out into new ground. And it means that we need to develop new capacities, that we need to learn new talents, maybe even, go back to school or get a mentor. It can be totally, interestingly enough, different than how we've seen ourselves. And so saying yes is a big deal. But once we've said yes, then we need additional support. And that comes in the form of will. That's one of the supports. Actually, there's lots of supports in the 12 powers. And so today, to illustrate that, we're going to start out by looking at Joseph's story. So remember that Mary has come back to Nazareth from visiting her cousin for 3 months. And just before she left, she was told that she's going to have a baby. She's young. The stories range. She's very young. Let's just say that. She's 15, 16 years old by most of the accounts. And she's engaged to be married to Joseph. And when she gets back, whether she tells Joseph what's going on or not, it's pretty clear that she's pregnant. And what's his first response? I got out about being a righteous man and unwilling to expose her to public disgrace. He planned to dismiss her quietly, whatever that means. Run for the hills, maybe. But then in a dream, an angel comes to him, and it's Gabriel. And Gabriel explains the whole situation. And interestingly enough, based on that, Joseph is willing to move forward and marry her. So let's look at the metaphysics of this. Joseph is an interesting character. All men in the Bible remind us that the masculine is more aligned with the head usually, and so he represents the intellect. But interestingly enough, he represents, his name means he shall increase progressively. And this is really the spiritual path for us. And it illustrates how beneficial the intellect can be to us on the path. We don't want it to limit us. We want it to continue through what? Through exposure to spiritual teachings, through even life experiences, to continue to take on a bigger and bigger perspective, a bigger view, a bigger idea of what is potential in our lives. So we want it to progress. Also, it's helpful to know that Joseph is from the lineage of David, which is the heart lineage. And so he also had some access to his heart, which is always helpful on the spiritual journey. And so what happens? The beautiful young woman that he's engaged to comes back, she's pregnant. The intellect draws some conclusions, right? It's interesting. We have to really kind of come to know that the intellect is influenced by life, it's influenced by the culture, what we've been taught in our family, by our experiences, and it's the part that kind of holds on. It doesn't mean that it can't, as we said, progress, but it's going to have its opinion, usually pretty quick. Is there anybody in the room that can't really relate to that? Something happens, we draw conclusions. But what's interesting is often that history that is brought forth in the intellect is not necessarily in alignment with the truth of this moment, of this very moment. It's bringing forth a truth from the past. And so he draws the conclusion, well, I'm just going to have to break off this engagement. She seems to be in love with someone else. Gabriel comes into the story. Gabriel always represents sort of the direct message from Spirit, the direct guidance from Spirit. But I have to say, I was thrilled to also read that Gabriel, did I write it down? But Gabriel, oh yes, Gabriel also, his name means God is my strength. I was really kind of hunting for strength. Because, and I'm jumping a little ahead because we're going to spend a lot more time on strength on Christmas Eve. But one of the qualities of strength is that it is aligning us with the truth. If you think about it, what is strength? Strength helps you. It's a huge support. But strength is always helping you to align with your truth. Now, your ego may think it's to help you align with your ego. But when you really see where your life starts to hum, it's aligning you with the truth. And the cool thing about strength is that it has a way of bringing clarity, so all of a sudden you get it. The truth is just crystal clear. Have you had that experience of, the truth kind of lands on you and you go, yeah, that's the truth. You may not be willing to align with it, but you kind of recognize it. Yeah, that's probably the truth. Yeah, so Gabriel comes to him in a dream. And really, the truth becomes clear. And so you're going to see that will is actually quite a mysterious power because it works in so many ways. So the first way we're going to address is it is a willingness. It is a willingness towards the truth, a willingness towards Spirit, an openness. Because you see, Joseph could have woken up from that dream and gone, oh, what a crazy dream. I'm still moving on. But there was something in him that helped him to not only recognize the truth, but to say, and I'm willing. Is that willingness alive in you? Do you feel open to Spirit? To the risk-taking that is inherent with Spirit? Yeah, take a breath. All of this needs space. This is actually big that we're making this journey together. So let's say you are willing. Again, it's just the first step, right? So will then moves on from there. And will not only has this cool dance with strength, but will has a cool dance with different aspects of will. This is sort of the mystery of will. So the first level of will that most of us know is what I like to call efforting will. It gets a really bad rap, like you're being willful, But really, if you look at it, we need efforting will. And we'll come back and visit it a little bit more. And then from there, we often can progress to what I like to call essential will, or the power of will. The more we define it more as an alignment with spirit. So efforting will is super cool. It allows us to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps when we're being invited into something that we don't know we can do. Isn't it funny how faith just it's like the candle blows out. Now, we want to suddenly come back into some kind of control. Remember, Herod isn't too interested in change because he's already got all the control. He's the ego in us. And yet, if there's a recognition of the truth, we know, yes, I need to do this. I'm just feeling shaky. So we pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. It's just a little challenge with it. That is that efforting will is very focused on the goal. And it can wear us out. And it can run over people in our lives, people we know or don't know. And it's not very attuned to adjustments in the truth. Have you noticed how we can get a real strong take on the truth and we start walking in that direction, and there's little adjustments that need to be made if we're willing to just be open. But just know that this efforting truth is not the most sensitive quality in our being. But as we relax, as we begin to go, hey, maybe I can do this. Maybe this is possible. And we begin to relax into what we're doing, then essential will can begin to arise. And by the way, this is my experience. I've spent a lot of time on this talk this week because Charles Fillmore gives this quality that I'm talking about, this ability to stay with something, to stick with it. He says it's a quality of strength. I was raised in unity, and of course, through the ages, our youth ed program has been based on the 12 powers. And I never could get that strength is what kept me on course. It always felt more like will. And so what the impact of that was that it kept these powers in my head, because I couldn't quite embody them. They didn't align with my experience. So I want to just assure you that while we give you these guidelines, you are a unique expression. They're going to manifest in you in different ways, and let that be the truth so that they can really be embodied in your experience, not just something that rattles around in your head. Okay, I'm going to call on will now. No, will, when will comes into your body, it's like, wow, I'm unstoppable. I can really do this thing. Essential will gives you a sense of confidence like you've never had before. So, we've got these two that dance together. It's pretty amazing. And we often have to start out with something new, with more of an efforting will, and then we move to a more essential will. Now, is that enough? Is the fact that we are these expressions of spirit and that we have the power of will, is that enough, or are we good? Well, let's check out this video and see.
As we've been talking about actually quite a bit this morning, keeping in touch. People are having birthdays, maybe families can't get together. One of these stories now is for Malcolm Gary, who is 70 today. Now, happy birthday, Malcolm.
Happy birthday, Malcolm.
Thank you so much.
And here you are on BBC Breakfast on your 70th birthday, and I think we can bring in your son, Ollie.
Malcolm, are you a bit confused as to why you're on BBC Breakfast this morning?
I have no idea why I'm here. Not a clue.
I was having a conversation with my dad. I was about 17 at the time. We got onto the topic of if you could learn an instrument, what would it be? And I said, oh, well, I'm actually planning on learning jazz piano. And my dad just laughed at me. Kind of really sat with me. So I decided to go and learn piano in secret to surprise him for his birthday. So when I was 20 years old, I went and bought a keyboard. I was absolutely certain that it was going to be done in a year from now. I was definitely wrong. Cut to 10 years later, here we are. I still haven't done it yet, but I finally committed to this year. It has to be done. It's my dad's 70th birthday, and this is the story. Okay, day one. So as with most of these things, I got off to a good start, but that quickly faded. Day 3, I think. Day 3. Say hello to my dad.
Hello, Dad.
Well, I call him Malcolm, he's not your dad. It's tomatoes and chicken. Chord progressions and all that sort of shit today. So 3 years later, it's 2013, and I still haven't done the performance.
Okay, so I asked Bonnie to stop the video at this spot because can you relate to this position? Come on, I saw this thing, I went, oh my God, this is my life. It's so great, you know. Oh, and I loved his enthusiasm. This is often what happens, right? When we start out, yeah, I can, yes, I can do this. And then what? 3 days into it, he's got his head down on the piano. And Bonnie did a beautiful job of catching the notes as he's hitting his forehead on the piano. So it's so great to understand that while we have these qualities of will available to us, that they sometimes need their own support from us. So Ollie does something really cool. You're going to see, and this is unfortunately a 10-minute video, so I couldn't show you the whole thing, but it's powerful. But he gets, it's 3 months till his dad's 70th birthday. And what he gets is that will is not developed enough in him for him to just do this on his own. Now, take another breath, because that's an okay thing. You see, our souls come in and they're relatively undeveloped. I mean, we have all met people that feel like old souls, but maybe they just develop faster than us, because most souls come in very open, very unpatterned, and they need to be developed. And so we need support for will. And what he does is brilliant. He starts making Zoom and Skype appointments with his friends and family. Of course, no one's to tell his dad. And he starts playing the piano for them. Also, he set a deadline. On my dad's birthday, I'm going to do this. So it's helpful to have goals. It's helpful to be held accountable. Do you see those Zoom calls held him accountable because he needed to then practice? And if I had been there with Ollie when his head was down the piano, it's also helpful to be curious. Why am I stuck right now? What is my experience? Because you see, we're bringing along all of our beliefs about who we are and what we can do when we try these new things. And that is a series of beliefs that we often call the ego or Herod. And there's a huge amount of momentum towards keeping things the same. A resistance towards stepping out in a new way where we might fail, we might look stupid, whatever. Should we take another deep breath? So what's really cool, and this might actually be a good place to bring in the census. Because you see, on Thursday, when you all come back, or watch us online. Oh, Friday. I'm rushing the journey. Sorry. Because one thing I don't want you to do is rush the journey. That's for sure. Everything, oh, she's fine wandering around. Everything needs to be brought together. So we can tend to want to run over the parts of us that are scared, or the parts of us that don't believe we can do it, or the belief we have, the way we've been told that we won't be able to do it. We tend to want to push through that with this efforting will. And you can. But the thing to understand is it won't bring lasting transformation. That time after time you'll go through the same experience. And when we bring all those qualities to Bethlehem, when we call in the senses, we're reminded of two things. One, that as we engage in our life, we are not needing to necessarily put our growth on hold. That our actual spiritual growth is happening through the experience of our life, the journey to Bethlehem. And that once we're there, all the characters of who we are brought together to be acknowledged, to be included in this process. Not necessarily to be given authority, but they need to experience the light of what we're doing. And so we bring all that together, and what happens for Ollie is we begin to see a transformation from efforting will to essential will. You're more in the flow. You're adjusting to the moment. You're more willing to come out with who you are. So he's doing all these things. Now, I also encourage you to take these steps in manageable steps. I would not have done what Ollie did. He's a filmmaker also. He presented his film to the morning show of BBC with 2.3 million watchers for the time that he's going to reveal to his dad that he's learned how to play one song on the piano. I'm sorry. You can also, by taking too big a steps, you can throw yourself into trauma, where you freeze up, where you're back efforting, where it's clunky. So I want you to watch the last part of this video, and I want you to notice a few things. Notice how there's still some efforting will going on. But notice how there's also the flow. And then I want you to watch the joy. It's very touching. Watch his joy. Watch the family members' joy. There is tremendous joy in bringing manifest a direct guidance from Spirit.
Ollie, would you like to take it away?
Of course. Happy birthday, Dad. Is this where you lean in and make it dramatic?
Oh, it's very good. Ollie, can I suggest something? You know, your dad sort of challenged you to do something a long time ago. Do you want to? Is there anything you want to challenge your dad to do by way of role reversal?
I wanted that part to be left in because it made me curious. How's the universe challenging you right now? What's it inviting you into right now? Because I find in my own life, it's a constant invitation. It can be the invitation to get out and do something. It can be the invitation to be quiet, be still, to get more comfortable with being still. It's all different varieties, but it's out of my comfort zone. So you got to see the joy. And it's really important to see, and this is, Sue was saying last week about how the spiritual path is intended to be joyous. Now, if you set that as it's always going to be joyous, you're going to be limiting yourself, right? Because it's also challenging at times, really challenging. But when we manifest that which we feel called to do, that which our heart is into, it's an incredibly joyous experience. Not just for us. It impacts the consciousness of the universe. It brings joy to the world. So I want to just share one other piece with you. The piano is my favorite instrument, and at age 30, I decided to take piano lessons. I realized I didn't feel particularly guided, but I realized I love this instrument. I never even tried to play it before. So I sign up and take lessons. Things go pretty well for a year, and then I hit a wall. I didn't find it that funny. And one day my piano teacher sat down with me, and actually I was always sitting on the piano bench, and I think she was always sitting next to me, but she had the courage, the faith, and the will to say to me, hey, this happens, particularly if you're taking piano up at age 30. There's going to be a spot where your finger coordination and your mind and everything are not working at a level where you can progress without putting a lot more time into it. And she was so great. She said, I'm not here to tell you to put more time into it. This has to be a choice. This is the power of will, right? But do you see, she was being a Gabriel to me because I wasn't getting it. I was really spending a lot of time in efforting will. I wanted to get to that goal. I didn't really understand what was going on, and I needed an external Gabriel. That's where we often support each other, not by giving a judgment, but by speaking the truth as we see the truth. So I was able to go back to her and say, boy, you're right, and I would like to continue the lessons on to work on this, this, and this, and then let's just see what happens to me at this level of playing. But I want to draw attention to this amazing woman that was my piano teacher, who had been a nun, and I think this might have helped. For over 40 years, she was in her first year out of the convent when I started taking piano lessons from her. She was barely surviving financially. Now, just hearing that, does that allow you to relax? No. Can you imagine the pressure on our systems at just barely surviving? And in that barely surviving, what do we tend to want to do? I'll take every piano student I can get. I don't care if they can play or not. I'm going to make them feel like they are Beethoven, and we're going to keep this thing going because I need to survive. There's a bit of Herod in that. I need to be in charge here. I need to be in control. I mean, it blew me away when I thought about it. This woman was far more aligned with the truth. She was willing to put aside her own fears and speak the truth to me. Can you imagine the will in her? Incredible. And strength, because remember, strength supports you in aligning with the truth, and will comes in and says, and I will do it. Strength says, I can. Will says, I will, and am willing. I asked her about it, and she said, it's much more of an adventure to align with the truth. Can you feel that? Yeah. Where are we putting our hands? Where are we putting the authority for our life when we align with the truth in something greater than us, in something that loves us. Now we have to have faith in that, but in a presence that loves us, a presence that wants us to get to experience the joy of manifesting that which is ours to do, a presence that wants us to experience how it is to develop our capacities and to grow, to progress. And so, as we continue the journey, I invite you to be open to what is your relationship with truth. Do you get to feel it with some kind of clarity? And is there a willingness and then a will that says, and I will see it through? If not, to be curious about that. If not, to pull up your bootstraps if necessary. For you see, we're all headed to Bethlehem. And in Bethlehem, we get to experience the joy of being birthed in to a new awareness of our unlimited potential. Namaste.